G'day, Dr. Tony here with the first episode of 2026 with my very good friend, Ian MacMahon. Ian, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Tony.
Mate, it's so good having you here. We talked last year about getting you on, and one thing led to another. You had a pretty epic year last year, my friend. So it's great you've joined us today. So how about we start with just a little summary, some of the things that happened for you last year and how you got through some of those things in terms of how you can turn your power on.
That's a great question, mate. So yeah, definitely it was epic because it was ups and downs, laughter, joy, sadness, drama. It had everything. So the start of the year, I was recovering from radiation and chemotherapy because I had a throat cancer in a tonsil, and that got sorted. But you still have to recover from those type of treatments. They really are brutal. From there, moved into the year with aspirations, I guess you'd say, to grow some business. And so I did a lot of work in the background whilst I was recovering. But about halfway through the year, one of my great longtime friends passed away quite suddenly. Like he had been struggling with being well for quite some time. But ultimately what happened to him was he didn't have an immune system to fight. And so it was a bit of a shock. And that segued a lot of plans and had a great impact on the back half of my year. But there was lots of wins. My wife Laura, she went and did a lot of great programs, did a lot of support work, started Breakthrough and Thrive, and got that up and running. And took on some coaching clients as well throughout the year. Mentored a lot of other coaches through another business as well, and that was really insightful and to be honest with you, super enjoyable. Loved it. And it inspired me to go more and more down that direction.
God, and what about even on top of that, you pretty much worked full time somehow in and amongst that. You were involved with the soccer club as well down your way. Parent, husband, mate, you've pulled off one of the most amazing years on the back end of coming through, a battle with a very, severe disease that a lot of people know about, cancer. And mate, I just acknowledge you so much for everything you've achieved that year. And I love how excited you are about still just supporting others. And I think there's a real genuineness about how you show up and stand and help others. And I acknowledge you for that. Tell me about how showing up for others has been one of your motivations, because I know it fills you up. And by giving out energy and wisdom and support, that helps you. Tell the listeners about how you manage that.
So even as a kid, I was one of those kids who liked helping other students if they were struggling with some topic matter that a teacher was delivering that they didn't quite comprehend. And so I'd speak at a peer level to them and get the breakthrough for them. And so I've always felt that desire to be in service. When I first left school, I went into the service industry, before going on to university and studying and ending up in supply companies, which in a way are service as well. So I've always had that passion. But in the self-development area, where you're really helping people with what's not working for them, what's going on, what could be better, what are they struggling with, helping people break that down for them. And for every person, it's unique and it's individual. And so when I do break it down for them and show them the pattern that's showing up, we can then have a conversation about that and get to the root cause. And every time I find that root cause and we clean it out, that's when lives really begin to change. And instead of that situation where they're blaming everyone else for what's not working in their life, they're taking that accountability path where they understand, what they're responsible for.
It's such a beautiful word, responsibility, the ability to respond to what's happening rather than being in that stress state, either, as you just said, reacting like they're blaming, they're bitching, they're justifying their behaviors, or they just deer in headlights and they're stuck and they're like stuck in the trap. They can't move forward. They can't take that right action. And either one of those being off center, bringing them back on center is certainly something you're able to help with. And I know you have a real unique perspective on the way you look at things. And look, of course, everyone's individual, but how do you find that area? Like, how do you get down underneath to what's the thing that's holding people back and get that breakthrough?
Yeah. So, you mentioned before about the soccer team, and I had the privilege of a couple of years ago of coaching this team, and last year was my third year of coaching them. And we've taken 12s to 13s to 14s, and 14 was their first year of really competitive football where it was a table. And so for those boys, they got mixed skills, and they're all at mixed different levels in life. Some of them are physical, some of them are mental in terms of their skills and their talents. And so what's holding them back is what I go after. And the way I do that is I kind of look at what sort of the feelings and emotions they've got coming up. And once I understand what the emotions are, that allows me then to find the pathway as to what's going on. And so in my head, like I've got this vision, and and there's a situation, and in that situation, they're having a judgment generally on a situation, and they're making it right or wrong, and it just sends them down this pathway into resistance, resentment, repression, revenge type emotions, which lands them into this triangle of disaster where they're just blame, shaming, and guilting everyone. And so what I teach them to do is have a look at what that is and go back to the origin of that. And when they go back to the origin of it, what they find is they have made themselves right or wrong, or someone else right or wrong, and they've gone down this whole judgment sort of process. What we do then is we go through some processes to clear out the backlog in and around that, whether it be a conditioning situation that's occurred in their life or some sort of trauma that's impacted them, which ended up setting in a value system for them or a belief system for them, which creates a lot of internal conflict when they're not aligned. And so, you being you and key on alignment, when we get that alignment in the value systems, we then see what happens with the belief systems. And we get rid of those sabotaging values and beliefs. And we flip them, we go to the juxtaposition of it. And so from that decision where we just accept it is what it is, it's not right or wrong. And then we start like going into the 4 agreements, and we get really specific with our words now. And we really define what it is. So we got clarity around that. And in that process, what we find is they're dropping into another side where they've got the opposite emotions occurring. So instead of being in resistance, they're in flow. Instead of being in resentment, they're in gratitude. Instead of being in revenge, they're in service. And that's service to themselves, service to others. And instead of being repressed, where they're not saying anything, they're expressing.
Mm.
And they end up in this other triangle, which is really beautiful, which is that accountability, responsibility, as well as I've gone blank on that now. So we got it because it's all in my head. So responsibility and ownership.
Mm.
And it all starts with that ownership side of things. And in that, the more you feed it, it goes back to that concept of the 2 wolves, the dark and the light. The more you feed into that process, the more you manifest and create. And so what a lot of people have, and I know this personally because it's something that's haunted me at different times in my life, is they've got an avoidance thing going on, or they've got some procrastination going on, and they can't quite unpick it. So we do this process where we really unpick that. And in the unpicking of it, what we find is that if it's about a procrastination situation going on, generally it's something that's happening up here in their imagination. And they're imagining worst case scenarios. And the fear of those worst case scenarios coming true is what's preventing them from stepping forward. because they're just running bad movies. The other side of that, though, is if they've had some sort of traumatic event in their life, then they're going to go to a memory. And they're going to go to a memory of what it was that they did not like. And they'll have a real feeling and fear association with that as well. And so what I find for people is if we get to the end of that, we get to the stage where they've broken the back of what it is that's got them in a grip. And then we do a timeline and we just hunt down all through their timelines back to the origin. We clean up the origin. And then as we move forward, we find all the other emotions and feelings that they had based in the judgment mind frame where they're reacting to situations. They've now got this different energy, different purpose to the situation where they're accepting and defining what it is, taking ownership and accountability of it, being responsible for it. Then when they step in, they take the first step. You know, Chinese proverbs, you know, the journey of 1,000 steps, you know, starts with what the first step. And so that's what they got to do. They got to take that first step. And because we break it down in a way that's so easy for them to take that step, they slowly build their confidence and trust in themselves. The sky isn't going to fall. They aren't going to be undone. Things might not turn out perfectly as they planned, but at least they're stepping away from where they were and moving forward in their life.
Yeah, that's a beautiful summary. And in Realms of Power, our whole point has been to get people from that state where they're just not feeling they are living their best life, moving towards standing in their power in whatever realm that is. And what you're saying is they can do surface level stuff, but unless they get back to the origin point of the trigger or the trauma or the whatever happened that set up that behavior, to be able to switch to the gratitude or switch to the responsibility or switch, unless they get to the origin, they'll just be repeating the loops. Is that sort of what you're saying?
Yeah. And they're stuck in that blind spot. They're going, why does this keep happening to me in life? Yeah, am I just a magnet that just attracts this nonsense, you know? And they get really frustrated. And in their frustration, they go into the habit of blaming others for their problems instead of taking that ownership that we spoke about. And so I find for people, it's quite challenging for them to actually take those first steps. But once they're on the pathway, it is. So a lot of the stuff I work with is in and around the great psychologists. You know, there's Jung, there's Rogers, Maslow. There's so many. You know, I stay a little bit away from Freud, not my favorite, but you know, but there's still great information and wisdom in and around some of the work. And so I draw on all of that, and then I set it up into an experiential learning. The concept of do then know, because we can grasp things intellectually, but unless we embody it and get the shift in our body, generally it won't stick. And so for a lot of people, like they'll wonder why when a woman speaks to them in a certain way, they repress. And all their mates are giving them a bit of a hit, you know, it's like saying, oh man, why are you letting them walk all over you like that? You know, like, where's your backbone? What he doesn't realize is there's been a moment in his life when he was younger, most likely, where a significant woman in his life really pinned him. And so the child in him is still playing that way. And so therefore they go quiet because that's instinctually what they do, you know, or maybe they don't feel like they've got the ability to make a clear decision. You know, we go back, we find out generally something that's happened for them is there's a time in their life where as a child, they were trying to make a choice for themselves. Maybe it was the difference between a Vegemite sandwich and a peanut butter sandwich. And they've made their choice and someone's kind of told them that, no, that's not what you should be doing. You do it this way, do it that way. And they give them all the advice about how it wants to be. And it's obviously done with love, but the child doesn't feel that. The child just feels like they've been made wrong. And so now they've got this, oh, I don't really want to make a decision thing going on in their life. it generally gets reinforced a few times before they become an adult and the pattern gets set in, and then they're really blind to their behaviors. They act in ways that they don't want to act, and they beat themselves up afterwards. They go, why did I do that? Why did I set that person up that way? Why did I speak to them that way? Why did I lose my temper?
Yeah, look,
Why did I react?
yeah, that's really important, I think, because some people would say, oh, you don't want to dredge up all the old stuff. You don't want to go back through all your old traumas, and can't you just let it go and get on with it? But as you said before, there's this embodying that happens. And if they are frustrated with their life, if they are running victim consciousness where they're blaming everything else, the weather, the government, and they're not just standing in their power, that some people just can't let that go because they don't understand that blind spot which you just talked about. And sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes they do need to go back there and clear that up. That's part of our journey. What would you say about how you've noticed so many people that you've helped coach directly or in the workshops you've run and stuff, when they've made that shift, what physical embodied changes do you see?
Their whole face changes, Tony. That they just relax. Instead of being this punched over, stressed out, frowny sort of person, they're seeing the world differently. They're just breathing it in, just going, oh wow. And that's and I talked before about, I use a lot of psychology principles that I've learned through different university courses I've done, as well as other workshops. But at the same time, I then use the biohacks to help and support them. And the biohacks are generally in and around breath or in and around mind. And in the mind, I take them to the place where they're just in that state right between consciousness and their subconscious, and allow them to have a really clean conversation with themselves and get the learnings. They become their own oracle, basically,
Mm,
and they get lit and they get lit. And so at the end of a process, when they've had the breakthrough, the relief on their face says it all.
mm,
And going back to your question, what's in it for me? I guess I'm addicted to seeing the relief on other people's face,
mm,
because like it lights me up when I know I've got it and I've cleaned it up for them. They go, oh, bang, that's great. But you got to remind people, like these things are, they're like your body. If you're lifting weights and all of a sudden, you've done your 30, you've done your 40, you've done your 50. But if you go too quickly, you don't give a chance for your ligaments and your tendons to catch up with your muscle growth. And so while your muscle has the ability to do this, generally you see people have injuries because they're lifting weights before their ligaments and tendons are ready to catch up. It's exactly the same emotionally. You've got the knowledge, you've got the awareness. Now you've got to practice the new way of being. And it gets clumsy and clunky for a little while. And I help people get really clear on how to walk it back when they misstep, when they misspeak and go, oh, no, that's actually pause. That's not what I wanted to say. I want to bring that back. And I get them to speak into what I call a stop sort of process, where you talk into what the situation is. And then what is the toll of that situation on me? And what can I own about that? And what's the pathway going forward? What are we going to do different? What do I want to see from you? And it's generally done as a question. Are you open to, this is what I would like to see? So it allows the other person to look at what it is and go, yeah, I'm going to pick that up and I'm going to commit to that. That's great. That's what we'll do.
mm,
Or they'll go, no, I'm not ready to do it that way yet. I'm
mm.
still going to be me and I'm not ready for change.
Yeah.
And then you got to get to that place with people. Well, it's not about cutting people out of your life, but the wisdom is, that it's like we're orbiting together. And if our orbits aren't in sync or in alignment, then every now and then we're going to clash into each other. And that's going to get bumpy. And it's going to change the orbit. And if it's people that you really want to be around, what will eventually happen is you'll sync your orbits so you don't keep bumping into each other. And if it's actually people you don't want to be around, then one of you are going to be bounced out of that particular area, and you'll orbit around something else, and they'll orbit around something else, and then you still won't have the clanking clash going on.
Look, I'm just looking at the picture behind you. I know it's like one of those things that goes behind you. It looks like you've got this dude meditating with light coming out of him over this beautiful sort of backdrop. And I guess we're talking about that journey through life of enlightenment and breaking through from those old patterns to be able to thrive, which really is the name of your business. What's the value you see for people when they can hold or maintain that state? And yes, of course, sometimes they're going to bump into things. There's no perfect utopia that we all live. That is the journey. But what's the actual value by turning your power on, taking that responsibility? What have you seen is the value in that for people?
It changes their lives, and they start to become who they're meant to be, and they start to live the life that they want instead of having to react to everyone else's situations all the time. They get the clarity around what it is they want, so they can make clean decisions about what it is they're doing.
Yeah. And one of our things in Realms of Power has been doing the stuff you love doing, like actually having fun, actually scheduling fun in your life. And there's so many people that I see as regular as with my clients, that are just going through the motions. They're just in that habit that this is life, I'm stuck. And not everyone, of course, but there's some people that, like, they're not even having fun. They're not even having fun at work, or they're not having fun. Even go to the beach and they're not having fun. So how important is bringing that part and aspect into that journey?
It's critical, mate. It's absolutely critical. And I touched before and mentioned the 4 agreements, and a lot of people can rabbit off what the 4 agreements are, quite intellectual about it, but they miss the point of what it was actually all about. And one of the key things, the reason why you practice the 4 agreements, is to invite joy, fun, and love into your life.
Yeah.
That's how critical it is. So, like, it's without fun, well, what are the emotions you're going to be experiencing?
Yeah.
Because, like, under the banner of, say, 12 different emotions, which you could then split into thousands with all the different nuances, but let's say there's generally around about 12. We all experience 12 core emotions every day. So you have a choice. What are the emotions you want to experience? Anger, discomfort, sadness, or is there something else that you want to experience, i.e., joy, fun, love? And love's a really interesting one, because, like, there's so many different references to what love is in our modern world. It relates all the way back to the Greeks and all the others that came before us, in terms of, there's fatherly love, there's motherly love, there's womanly love, there's man love, and they've all got different names, but it's all pretty similar. But the one I always dive into and unpick, because I find it's the one that sets them free, it really allows them to thrive and get that breakthrough, is really comprehending and embodying and experiencing what it feels like when you are practicing unconditional love. And that to me is a primary. The unconditional love is, we don't need to be in a relationship. We don't need to be in the same room. I still love you. That is so freeing, because now they're not in a transactional love where I'm going to do this and you're going to give me that. I'll go make $100,000 this week, and you make sure all the meals are on the table. It's not that version of love. Or I did this and I did this, so now let's go and make intercourse, have a sexual experience. It's when you line it up and you're having all of the physical experiences together.
Mm.
as well as the emotional internal ones in sync. That is mind blowing. That is a game changer for men and women.
Yeah. When you put needy into love, it just is the opposite, isn't it? It's like soupy, needy, attaching. Oh, so it is unconditional love. It's a great thing. And I think that's one of your themes with the workshops you're looking to be running into this year, Ian, with the Breakthrough and Thrive coaching. Can you just touch on that for us? What's the actual vision for the coaching things you'll be running this year?
Well, there's multiple in the pipeline, but the one I want to get out of the gate first is a father and son's workshop, and it's based for two age groups effectively. There's the sort of like the 5 year olds to the say the 11, maybe 12 year olds, depending on the emotional stage of the child. And then there's another one that's around about that 12-year-old up to say 16-year-olds, once again, depending on the emotional stage of that child. And what those workshops about is about fathers and sons coming to do a camping experience. So we're out there in the wilderness and we're having a good time. There's water around, there's sunshine, there's greenery, there's places to play. And what I do is I isolate the fathers and son throughout the day and allow the kids to go off and play and do some really great fun activities. So they're having a good time. And whilst I've got the dads together, we speak into what it is in terms to have effective communication. Like if they could have the best relationship with their son, what would that look like for them? And so we go through the process of getting those learnings locked in. And then in the evening, we bring back the old rituals. We have a bit of a fire and we sit around it and we introduce them to the Celtic concept of a talking stick, which probably comes out of the Vikings as well. Whoever's got that stick, they hold the floor. And so the boys are prepared for this by going into the concept of it being a bit of a sacred space. It's a ceremony. Like you want to have some reverence about this. We're not just sitting around the fire, the men drinking beer and the kids were watching us. It's not like that at all. It's clean. There's no alcohol. So we're just sitting there and we're having a chat. And then generally I'll ask a few questions and the men go first. And in that demonstration of the man going first, he's speaking into when he's holding the talking stick. We go around the circle where each man speaks and answers the question. He's role modeling to the son. And then the boys do it. And when the boys do it, it's quite surprising. Like I've had some betas of this already where I've done some trials. And I've had a man who has a son he would have been about 14 at the time, and he was pretty high on the spectrum in terms of his autistic behaviors, and he was super concerned coming into this. Like he was so worried that his son was going to have a tic or a problem or not be able to sit still and be the odd one out. And, whilst part of him I felt was like really concerned for his son, also thought part of him was a little maybe embarrassed for himself as well. Like he was running some energy around that. So throughout the day, I spoke into how we're all unique and different and we have gifts, and let's just see what happens and know that he'll be supported no matter what. Well, he was amazing. He was part of, I guess, that benefit on those sorts of spectrum is when they're focused, they are ultra focused. And so we got his attention right from the get-go through the process of getting set up, walking into the space, finding his place in a ceremony. So he dropped into the reverence side of it and he was all ears listening. Not only did he sit still, when he felt like he didn't want to have anything to say, he just passed the stick. And that was his option. But before we finished that night, he held that stick and on multiple occasions spoke directly from his heart what it was for him in answering a question. And in doing that, his dad was just like, wow, I have no idea that he could sit that still and be that articulate, And the way I like to finish that off is just this idea of like, what is it you really love about being a father to your son. And the man speaks into that, and the boys, what is it that you really love about your father? And the boy speaks into that. And it's just such a beautiful thing to witness. And the energy is just amazing. It's people don't do this often.
No.
Not a lot of people do, but that they haven't been taught or they're too busy, and like I'm a surrogate dad for like 16 or 15 kids because one of my boys is actually in the team. But like for 16 boys in a soccer team, and they're engaged and they're not made wrong and they're not judged and they're supported. And no matter what's going on for them, they become fearless because they know they're not going to get chastised for a mistake. They're going to get asked to reflect on what it was and what better looks like, and they go for it. And in doing that, I then transfer those sorts of things into the workshops. My son, who came with me on the beta, and that was before I got sick, so it was a few years ago. He still raves about that camping trip as the best fun he's ever had. When are we doing that one again? And I said, well, it'll be this year.
Mate, I absolutely love it. What a beautiful share. All right, well, mate, we better wrap up this episode. How do people find out about the workshops that you'll be running? What's the contact point for you, Ian? Because I'm sure there'll be some listeners that would love to know more.
Yeah, well, in the infancy stage of that time. So I guess the best thing for them to do is I'll set up a Facebook page. It's kind of there loose in the background, but it's not very active. It's under Breakthrough and Thrive.
Yep.
They can find it through that, where breakthrough is one word. They can find my own personal and then find links to it through my own name, which is Ian MacMahon.
Yep.
There'll be a YouTube under Breakthrough and Thrive that'll be developed over this year as well. So there'll be information there for them. They can always just email me direct if they're keen. And that's breakthrough, one word, thrive.today@gmail.com.
Yeah, awesome, man. That's so cool. I think more of that work, father-son work and mother-daughter and all the other stuff needs to be done.
Oh, that's the next one. Yeah, so after father and son will be mother, daughters, then family. So like family dynamics is a big thing for me. I see if we get that down pat and cleaned up, the rest of things when they go out into the world just becomes easier.
Yeah, I love it. All right, mate. In one sentence, you've got a final bit of golden wisdom you want to share with our listeners.
If you want to be in my orbit, let me help you.
Ooh, I love it. That's not just you, that's everyone. That's so deep, man. Beautiful.
That's 10,000 words on that one.
Mate, you did that so well. Ian, it's an absolute pleasure having you on the show and just being a mate in my life, mate. It's been great knowing you. And I love that what you're doing in the world. I really hope and wish your workshops go out there more for people to break through and thrive. I love even the name. It's brilliant. So to our listeners, once again, thank you so much for tuning in. You guys are legends. I hope you all have an amazing 2026. So have an awesome day. See ya. Wow. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Realms of Power. I have such gratitude for your time and energy and the vision to join us with turning your true aligned power on. To take your power up another level, you could share this episode with someone who you think would benefit or make a comment online that would help us get this information out there. We'd really appreciate your love and support. Hope you have an awesome day. See ya.